Welcome to the League of Women Voters meeting tonight. And I was requested by PAC TV to make an announcement both at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. As of Tuesday, December 5th, the following Comcast channels will change channel numbers. And this will also be listed in the Plymouth Independent and probably on different websites, and I'm sure they'll find other places because I wouldn't remember this. Public access Comcast 13 will become Comcast 6. Education access will become Comcast 14, will become Comcast 8. Government access Comcast 15 will become Comcast 9. Thank you. Pat?
Good evening to everyone here and at home. I'm Pat McCarthy, and on behalf of the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, Ginny Davis and I, both board members for the local Plymouth Area League of Women Voters, welcomes you to an evening with our Plymouth Town Manager, Derek Brindisi. Our league is 63 years old. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political membership organization which builds citizen participation in the democratic process. The mission statement of the League of Women Voters Massachusetts states that it empowers voters and strengthens democracy for all. Derek's presentation will be followed by questions prepared by our League of Women Voters. We hope you will join us for a social hour following our event. Ginny will now introduce Derek to all of you. Thank you.
So this is Derek Brindisi's background, and I read it when he sent it to me, and I went, wow, very impressed. Derek Brindisi is currently the town manager for the town of Plymouth, where he also served as the assistant town manager from 2015 to 2017. Before coming back to Plymouth, Mr. Brindisi was the town manager for the town of Upton between 2017 and 2022. And before that, he had served the city of Worcester from 2000 to 2015, with the last 8 years as the Director of Administration and Health. From 2015 to 2021, Mr. Brindisi was an adjunct faculty member at the Worcester State University. Since 2009, Derek Brindisi has been stationed at Pease Air National Guard Base, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where he currently serves at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and as the Installation Public Health Officer. During his tenure at Pease, Derek has served as the Public Health Advisor to the New Hampshire State Surgeon and served as the National Guard Liaison Officer to the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services and Emergency Management during the state's response to COVID-19. Mr. Brindisi holds a master's in public administration from Clark University and a Bachelor of Science from the Worcester State University. During his career, Mr. Brindisi has participated as a fellow in the Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation Leadership Program, as well as the National Association of County and City Health Official Leadership Program. Most recently, he has completed the Harvard University Kennedy School of Government's Leadership in Homeland and Security Program. And now I would like to introduce you to our town manager, Derek Brindisi.
Thank you for the introduction, Jenny, and thank you, Pat, for inviting me here today, and thank you, everyone, for attending. So, you know, I've been here since March of 22, and I've had similar types of presentations at Pine Hills and other places. So this, I enjoy doing stuff like this because folks get to kind of understand who I am and kind of my philosophy in local government. I've been, as Ginny pointed out, I've been working in local government since 2000, so almost 24 years. So worked in large communities, small communities, And so, and kind of Plymouth is kind of the middle of both those two communities. So worked for communities that have representative town meeting like Plymouth, open town meeting like Upton, and council forms of government like the city of Worcester. So I've had the opportunity to have a kind of a breadth of how local government operates and have opinions on how local government should operate. So I'll talk a little bit, just about myself and my role as town manager here in town, and how that interrelates with our executive branch and certainly our legislative branch. So just a little bit, you heard a lot about, through the introduction, about myself, and those of you that are town meeting members probably heard a little bit about my background being from city of Worcester, born and raised in the city of Worcester, got my undergraduate degree in the city of Worcester, got my graduate degree in the city of Worcester, so spent a lot of time in Worcester. So, it's where I was born and raised, and, it's where my family is, and so I still have roots to Worcester. I'm happily residing in Plymouth right now, so I really appreciate coming back to Plymouth because when I was here the first time, let me put it this way. When I interviewed for the assistant town manager position in 2015, is the first time I ever went to Plymouth. So when you're a Worcester kid, if you go on your school trips, they take you to the Boston Aquarium. They don't take you to the Rock or to the Mayflower. So, but I fell in love with Plymouth in 17, and I remember leaving in 17, and I had said to a lot of my friends that I had made here, I said, I hope someday I can come back and be the town manager. And during my 5 years away from Plymouth, I was hoping I still made those connections, I kept those connections, but there was a period of time I thought that this wasn't going to ever happen. Like, I didn't really think it was going to happen.
Excuse me, we have somebody that's really hard of hearing. Can you speak
Sure.
better?
Yeah.
And maybe test it with him so he can hear.
Okay, I'll just lean into this a little bit more. How's that? It's just low. So again, when I left and I finally came back, during my time away, I would often tell folks stories about my time in Plymouth and how much I enjoyed it. Looking back, I have children. I have a 27-year-old, I have a 24-year-old, and a 21-year-old. And I wish, if I could turn back time 20 years ago, I would have raised my children here in Plymouth. I raised my children in Worcester. Why? Because of where your family is, and so it's really all you know. But those of you that are from Plymouth, I think, I hope you appreciate how great of a community you have in raising children here. I think, you have given your children a great opportunity to have an experience of a lifetime, more than most of us can say, I think, in growing up in central Massachusetts. Again, 24 years in local government. I've been in the Air Force for the better part of 19 years. Looking to retire in about a year and a half from now from the Air Force. I actually have drill this weekend, so not looking forward to going to drill. I drill up at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, right at Pease Air National Guard Base. And as pointed out, I've been in public health my entire career. I actually left public health in 2015 when I came here. And so and I'll talk a lot about our Health and Human Services Department because of, my strong public health background and why I think that's so important for a community this size. So that's kind of who I am. Again, I'm married, 3 children. I have 2 grandchildren, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I drive back to Central Mass as much as I can just to hang out with those 2 guys. And I bring them down here during the summer so they can hang out and catch crabs, as they like to say. So my role as town manager, it's probably the most difficult question I'll answer tonight because it's really hard to explain all the things that I do and the assistant town manager do. So I tried to, today I was trying to list out kind of all the different things. So first and foremost, most of what I do is under the direction of the select board. So Selectman Canty's here today, and I'm sure many of our other members are watching this evening, making sure I don't say anything awry, right? But when you think about it, and I think when I came back here a year and a half ago, folks didn't understand, I think, the relationship between the town manager and the select board. And so my position, at least my philosophy on that, is that my job is to provide advice and get good information for the select board members to make informed decisions, right? And so once they make that decision, it's our job to execute those decisions on Wednesday morning. And that's what we do. And, I wrote down something here that, because I'm sitting in the office this afternoon, and, a lot of things are happening during the day. But one thing that struck me is that my role is as a decision maker. I mean, primarily what I do all day long is make decisions, because whether it's town staff or department heads, they're looking for the final decision to be made on whatever that may be. That could be a procurement issue, that could be an operational issue, that could be a financial issue. And so at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. But those decisions are made in the framework of the select board. So oftentimes if I have someone approach me about an open space item, I say, well, this is how Selectman Mahoney is going to question you on a Tuesday night, because he's very much interested in, say, open space, for example. So I provide guidance and advice to the department so that they can be successful in the things that they do. And so we look at we have about 50 different select board policies, and that's kind of the guiding framework. Now, some of the things that you may or may not know is that some of these policies are antiquated. So, one of our goals this year, and I'll talk a lot about goals in the next 30 minutes, is to look at all these policies, select board policies, and update those so that they're more 21st century and contemporary. A lot of them, some of our select board policies date back to the 1980s. I think things have changed in Plymouth since 1980, but that's, that gets back to good government and being efficient. So another role that I play is working with our finance director and our assistant town manager in preparing the budget. And I'll talk about the budget in detail later on in the slides, but that is a major responsibility of the town manager to be able to come to the select board, and we're going to do that in the next couple of weeks, to present a draft recommendation of the budget. The board will consider it. The board will ask important questions. They give us more guidance and more direction, and we go back and we further refine that budget, and we'll come back about 30 days later so that the board can vote on the budget that ultimately goes to Advisory and Finance Committee. And again, we'll talk about in detail about the budget, but that is a very complicated process. I represent the town in litigation. We'll talk a little about that today, because we have always pending litigation. I represent the town at state and local meetings with our state delegation, or locally in the community. We're going to be entering collective bargaining negotiations with our 8 unions. I represent the town on that front. Unfortunately, sometimes it's the town manager's responsibility to impose discipline on employees, so I am also the arbitrator when it comes to discipline. And then I think although this is a challenge every day, it's something that I take pride in, is managing complaints. One thing that I am very mindful of is citizen complaints. If a citizen wants to meet with me and have a conversation, I have never said no. I would love to be able to have a department mitigate that complaint, but if we can't do it, if they can't do it, then I always will say yes to a resident who wants to sit down and have a conversation about what's going on in their neighborhood. I would, for the folks that are listening at home and the folks in the room, I would say, please set up an appointment. I just spoke to somebody on Monday who said, I've been by the office 3 times and I've been trying to meet with you. And my response oftentimes is if you're looking for me in the office, you're probably never going to find me. Because honestly, we're just never there. We're usually at meetings for various reasons, and it's not that often, though, you can just walk in because I'm sitting there. So I would always say, make an appointment, and we'll always set up a time. We can always make time to meet with citizens to manage some of their concerns. So that's a lot of what I do, and I'm sure I'll miss a little bit of the town manager's role, but that's kind of the framework of the day-to-day look of what we do. I mean, it's interesting work because, I had a meeting last week in the morning, and we were talking about roosters, nuisance roosters. And then later on that day, I'm meeting with the fire chief and emergency management, and we're talking about preparing for winter storms. And then everything in between, then meeting with the finance director to talk about this year's budget. So it runs the gamut of our conversations. And again, that gets back to providing good advice, good recommendations to departments so that they can be successful when they come back to the board. And so as far as the selectmen and kind of their roles and responsibilities, they're the executive branch. They make the decisions in between town meeting on the direction of the town. And you all vote for our selectmen based upon their philosophy on providing governmental services. And so it's our hope, certainly, Mr. Canty and I, we've had this conversation, to really start to build bridges with town meeting, because town meeting is the legislative branch, right? And so, oftentimes I think the town manager may get criticized or the selectmen may get criticized for making decisions. But some of the decisions that we make are day-to-day decisions, but at the end of the day, town meeting is the ultimate decision maker. That's the balance of power. So the selectmen being the executive branch and town meeting being the legislative branch, it balances out so that not one branch is more powerful than the other. But we go to town meeting. There's nothing that we can or can't do that town meeting doesn't approve. Nothing. So every dollar that we spend is approved at town meeting. And there's a process in which the budget is heard, through subcommittees and public hearings, and then it gets to town meeting for final debate. All of the laws that are created in town are drafted by the administration. They're approved by the select board to be on the warrant, and then ultimately they're debated at town meeting. So if you're upset with a law that's happening in town, come see us first. But you got to work with your town meeting members because they're the ones that are going to say yay or nay to it. So, it's, I'll say it again, that it's interesting that, some of the criticism often falls back on the town manager or the select board, but it's a shared approach. It's a team approach. We all do this together. So if we advance a bylaw, for example, I'm going to pick on the nuisance bylaw because this just came up at our last town meeting, and it doesn't get approved at town meeting, and someone calls up my office and says, I'm tired of looking at births on Warren Street, what are you going to do something about it? And my response is, we can only do so much given the laws that are given to us and the authority that's given to us by town meeting. So again, having good relationships, building good relationships and rapport with the town meeting members is super important because that's how we're going to move this community forward. And the last thing before I go to the next slide, I just wanted to talk about kind of my philosophy on local government. And it's just good government. So what does that really mean? We need to be efficient with the use of our dollars. We need to be effective with the use of those dollars. Responsive, I'm very focused on our departments being responsive to the needs of our community and getting back to them. I don't like when I hear that, a resident has been waiting 2 days to get a response back from a certain department. That's not acceptable. We provide services. We're a service-oriented organization, and we need to be responsive to the needs of our community. And then lastly, I say fiscally responsible, right? So everybody complains about their taxes, right? Find a community that doesn't complain about their taxes. There's no such thing, right? But we understand that, we recognize that the dollars that are appropriated at town meeting, we need to be responsible for those dollars and be good stewards of those dollars because they're coming from you all. And so those are the kind of the parameters that I try to work within as far as my philosophy on providing services back to our community. Again, being efficient, effective, responsive, and fiscally responsible. It's late already. Wow. I'm just going to go through this quick because it's already 7:20. I didn't realize I talked that long on the first slide. So this was the table of organization that was what I walked into a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. And so you can, it's pretty standard table of organization, but and I don't know if this would work, but I can't make it larger from here, but what, these three divisions, one's the town clerk's office, one's procurement, one's the airport, they see how they kind of stick out here? And they reported directly to the assistant town manager. And they reported directly to me when I was the assistant town manager. And being the assistant town manager, I was disconnected to what was going on in fire, police, and all the other major departments, finance department. So what I wanted to do, again, being more efficient, is try to consolidate those three divisions into the appropriate departments that you'll find beneath. And so I'll talk about that in a second. Again, I'm sorry that this slide isn't as good as it should be. But so the ones in red are the ones that we have reorganized. So what you would see here on the far right is we elevated the town clerk's office to a department level position, no longer reporting directly to the assistant town manager. You all know how important the town clerk's office is. Between town meetings, preparing for town meetings, the multiple elections we have a year, special elections coming up, January 13th, PSA. And so I wanted the town clerk to be reporting directly to me because I understand how important that work is. So that was one change. The other change, give me 1 second. So for the finance department, you remember this last slide, we had procurement sitting up here, the procurement office, financial function, standalone. We moved the procurement office under the direction of the finance director. Makes good sense. It's operating extremely well. I'll skip this one for a second here. You all know about the police department, has now responsible for the harbor master's office. Although contentious at the time, you're looking back on it, that was a very important decision the select board made to do that. Now, again, these are my recommendations to the select board. Only the select board can approve a reorganization. I can only make recommendations. And so the harbor master's office is really important because of all these new police reform laws and post standards. It's working extremely well because of that. And I think we now have mitigated potential liabilities by doing that. The Public Works Department now has the airport. The airport manager now reports directly to the DPW director. So again, subtle change. It allows us to be a little bit more efficient in the work that we do. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Health and Human Service Department later, but we had the Community Resources Department here in town. It was made up Recreation Division, Veterans Agent, the CAL, so Center for Active Living, and the library. And so we took that framework and then we moved over Public Health, the Public Health Division, which was under Inspectional Services, and we created what is now a Health and Human Services Department. The town has never had a Health and Human Services Department. As you know, we have growing needs, societal needs in our community. This department is a department we can turn to help us mitigate some of those concerns and those needs. And then the last one, I'm going to only talk a little bit because the select board hasn't approved it just yet. I'm going to bring it to the select board on Tuesday. But what I'm going to propose on Tuesday is under the Department of Marine and Environmental Affairs, they have the Harbor Master's Office, which is now under the Police Department. I want to elevate the department, the now Department of Environmental Affairs, I want to elevate its status so that we can focus more on climate planning, sustainability, and resiliency. How are we going to do that? We're going to take our climate resiliency planner. We're going to slide that position under the Department of Environmental Affairs. We're going to take our energy officer, who's now working in the planning department, and move that under Environmental Affairs to create what will now be the Department of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Again, I'm hoping the select board approves this, but that's a recommendation I'm going to make on Tuesday. And then from that, we will remove the Animal Control Office and move that under the Public Health. So those are some of the changes we've made over the past 18 plus months, again, to make government, I think, a little bit more efficient, centralize some of the work that's kind of decentralized, so that we can be more effective day in and day out. And then the last item I'll bring up, you see this little town council up here? You can't read it. But a decision that was made October of '22 was to stop outsourcing our legal work and to bring town council inside town hall. And so we did a one-year experiment, and it worked extremely well. We had attorneys working on the fourth floor on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's gone so well. Our department heads have said that it's been extremely helpful in their day-to-day work to be able to walk upstairs and sit down with an attorney to help figure out whatever the issues are. In the past, we outsourced our work to KP Law, and they're out of Boston, working out of their homes. Very good law firm, but the responsiveness we get now by having attorneys work in-house has proven itself extremely well. So the next step along that pathway is to have general counsel. So one attorney that's going to work on the fourth floor in the legal office 40 hours a week. So that's the next step. It'll be an employee, no longer outsourced. And that, again, that's going to start to help us build out what will ultimately be, over a period of probably 10 years, a law department. So I'll get into some early accomplishments. Again, I don't take credit for these. This is a team approach, as I mentioned. Certainly, none of this would happen without the select board support and guidance. So the first thing we did when I came on board is like, hey, listen, there's a lot of things that are happening in this very complicated community, a lot of things going on. And so we can no longer be a mile wide and an inch deep, because when you're a mile wide and an inch deep, you're not gaining any traction, you're not getting anywhere. So we said, how do we do that? We got to be more focused. We need to set goals so that the community knows what the select board is, their expectations. And so that little diagram to the right here, the FY24 select board goals are on the website. Last year we had FY23 select board goals. And then in May of this past year, we did like a year in review, and we were able to measure ourselves. How successful were we over the course of time? And so from the community standpoint, you can see exactly the direction that the select board has set for the town. And you can have input on that too, because we have these conversations publicly. None of these things that I'm going to talk about were done on the fourth floor. Everything I'm talking about has taken place on a Tuesday night. So to me, that's an early accomplishment, because now we're more focused. I'll talk, this whole tech agreement took a lot of time and energy, dozens of executive sessions, which can be controversial, but that's what you kind of need to do in order to negotiate or don't give up your negotiation position. But the whole tech agreement, ultimately, like I'll just kind of give you the 40,000 foot level. It ended up being $13 million in cash over 8 years, and a $3 million credit to the town to purchase the land when land becomes available. They have committed in this agreement to work with the town to master plan the 1,500 acres. So when that land does become available, we know exactly what the town wants. So again, that's going to be a community-driven process. We want to ask folks, what do you want to do with the 800 acres on the west side of 3A? What do you want to do on the 700 acres on the east side of 3A? And we'll have a master plan set up just for that land. Am I missing something on the agreement? I think I missed something. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's another big one. So thank you. So part of this agreement is they're giving us 270 days to work with town meeting members and the community on whether or not to acquire this, and they're not allowed to take it out of the Chapter 61 status it's in before the 270 days expire. So that gives us 9 months in order to decide if we have the financial ability to acquire some of this land. So it was a big win, 8 years. I think we all feel good about that agreement because it gives us all certainty over that period of time. The PEC agreement is basically the health insurance agreement, historic agreement. If you look at the last 10 years of PEC agreements, you don't really see much change in health insurance costs back to the taxpayer. this agreement, and I have to give 100% credit to the select board because they drove this conversation. Because this agreement is a negotiation with the town and with the unions, so 9 of them. And so, and the retirees as well. We ended up saving in year 1 of a 6-year agreement over $3 million back to the taxpayer. And so you think of that over a 6-year period, it's $18 million in savings, right? Again, historic agreement, and that's going to help us balance our budget this coming year. Under the leadership of the fire chief and police chief, we moved our dispatch center to the Worcester County Sheriff's Department now. So when you call 911, it'll say, did I say Worcester? Thank you. The Plymouth County, so actually technically we could do it in Worcester because it's just a phone call. But the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department is now handling our 911 dispatch. So if you call 911, I'll give you a quick 411 on this. So if you called with your cell phone, oftentimes what would happen is, especially if you're on the road, you call your cell phone, it rings to the state police, and then they have to transfer it down to, say, our 911 dispatch center at the PD. And then if it's an EMS call, they transfer over to fire, right? And then if it has to go to Brewster ambulance, then they transfer over to Brewster. You see the problem that this creates is 4 ring downs that have to take place on one 911 call. We've been able to compress all of that by going to the sheriff's department and having them dispatch it. We have our fire dispatch and our police dispatchers sitting in the same space. So if it goes to police, they just turn their chair and they just push it over to the fire department right there. So this is all about saving lives. It's not about saving money, but we think that we've been able to cut our dispatch time in half, and we believe that that's going to turn into saving lives. So again, another early accomplishment. Technology upgrades, I'll just talk about them quickly. See Click Fix is a program we just launched this past year. It's an online tool that if you have a complaint in your neighborhood, a tree down, a pothole, flooding in your neighborhood, you go onto the system, you input it, you put your address, your email address in, it gets pushed to the appropriate department. That department sees it, they respond to it, and then they are required to put in an update as to the response, and that gets pushed back to the complainant, and you know exactly when that has been resolved. So again, trying to be a little bit more efficient in the use of our staff. That program is wildly used. We get probably a dozen complaints about potholes that we wouldn't ordinarily have known, which create problems, vehicle accidents and damage. We'll get about a dozen per week. So our DPW crews can get out and fill those potholes, as an example. I think many of you have seen the new website. Long overdue, more user-friendly, something that we focused on online permitting. We created a one-stop shop for building, wiring, plumbing, and now fire permits. So you can go to this 3rd floor, a one-stop shop, or you can just go online and file your permits online. Again, trying to be a little bit more effective. The online bill pay is another program. We're still trying to work out some of the kinks, but that's going to launch soon, where you can pay your bills online. Your bills are going to be sent to you electronically if you want them to be sent to you. So the days of having to mail all of our water bills out to all the residents, if you choose to have them done electronically, they can be sent to you electronically. You can pay electronically. And the last thing, although you guys don't see, it's very important to me, is our HR modules. So when I started 2 years ago and you were onboarding, you would get a scanned-in packet of W-9s and all these other forms you had to fill out, and some of them are crooked, some of them from the 80s. And so now we've gone away from that 1990s technology, and now if you're onboarding, you go on the system, you put in all your information just once, and it populates the 90 pages behind it. Again, it helps our HR department be extremely more effective. So those are just some of the technology upgrades the past year. And then the last accomplishment I'll talk about, just because it's received some criticism, is the Claremont agreement. Again, we talked about it publicly, we negotiated it in executive session. The Claremont is a development project that's taken place in West Plymouth. The board worked out an agreement with Claremont to Claremont was getting their permits to construct this development, and it's a 55-plus apartment complex. And so they were getting their permits through the ZBA process, but what we found during the summer of '22 is that on a firm capacity issue, which is limited water during a drought situation, there wasn't enough water being pushed into West Plymouth. The only way to resolve that was to build a $4.5 million booster station. So we have this water deficit problem with or without Claremont. It's a 900,000 gallon water deficit under this firm capacity definition. Claremont will consume 30,000 of that. So we went to Claremont and said, listen, if you want your permits, you got to work with us. We want you to build the booster station. So we don't have to go back to town meeting in April and ask town meeting to appropriate $4.5 million. So through that agreement, although they were going to construct this anyways, this ended up being a public-private partnership where Claremont is going to build this booster station with the use of their dollars and not the taxpayers' dollars. We will give them a reduced fee structure, so they won't be paying everything that they ordinarily would for water and sewer connections. So we waived some of that in order to make this happen. So I bring that up because anytime we can save money to our taxpayers, we will do that. But we won't do it at the detriment to the community. But again, this was a kind of a by right project that was going through the special permit process with the ZBA. So some priorities and opportunities that are coming up. So I talked about all the goals that we set. If you're interested, just go on the website and you'll see there's 5 pages of goals. There's probably like 5 or 6 goals for each one of our departments. So you'll see those up front, what we're working on this fiscal year. But I don't like doing things haphazardly. And so the master planning that is going to take place in this community over the next 12 to 24 months, I think is going to set the course. So most of you know that at town meeting, they passed approximately $430,000 so we can do a town-wide master plan. And so that's a 20-year plan. That's going to set the strategic direction of this town. But there's other master plans, and I talked about already the Holtec property. We want to master plan the Holtec property so we know exactly what we're getting ourselves into when we get the phone call that they're going to start selling that land. Very important. Forges Field. We were starting to have conversations about extending the lease over there with Crosswinds, and then we said, well, and they were willing to help build us another ball field, a baseball field. And I said, well, let's stop for a second. What do we want Forges Field to be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And so we will be entering a master planning process for Forges Field. Our youth need playing fields. There's no doubt about it. If you talk to our rec director, she's always trying to figure out where our youth are going to play with any one of the programs. So we want, again, we want to take a step back on what we ordinarily would have done and just built a field and say, what do we want this to be over the next 15 years, and then start phasing in Forges Field. So I think Forges Field, honestly, in 15 years is going to be a gem on the South Shore. It's already a great place to play ball, but I think it has lots of opportunities. So other opportunities that you're going to hear about in the next 12 months, there's this award called the All-America City. So every year there's an award competition that comes out, and this year it's around civic engagement. And they set up a number of goals and objectives around civic engagement. And so when they launched those goals or those objectives for civic engagement, we weren't prepared. We weren't in a situation. But we leaned 1 year forward and said, what are they going to do in 2025? And they had announced that in the 2025 All-America City competition, it's going to be around climate resiliency and sustainability. So the board, working with various departments, said, we're going to go after it. We want to get that award. We want to prove that we're in the top in the nation around climate resiliency and sustainability. So it's going to start with that department starting next week, I hope, and then we're going to start working over the course of the calendar year 2024 with all the organizations. And we have lots of nonprofits that are very interested in this work, and with our boards and committees as well. So more to come on that opportunity. And then I'll just talk a little bit about this I didn't bring any down, I should grab some. We'll post it on the website. So we participated in this Invest magazine. They had a launch event last week. So the magazine is called Invest Boston. We got a phone call in May from this company and said, listen, we don't want this magazine just to be about Boston. We'd like Plymouth to participate. So we said, yeah. It has 1 million readers across the nation. And so if you have a chance to read this magazine, there's 10 pages about all things great in Plymouth. It talks about, our aquaculture industry. It talks about, what's happening on the development side and what has happened, over the course of time. It talks about a potential convention center that may or may not happen here in town. What it will bring, I think, is, put the town on a national stage of folks that are saying, geez, Plymouth is a place that I think that we really need to invest in. We often talk about commercial industrial growth. Well, sometimes you're not going to get that commercial industrial growth from the local investors, and sometimes you need outside money. And not to bring up Worcester, but that's what's happening to Worcester right now. A lot of the investors from Boston have, there's no more space left in Boston to grow, so they're starting to invest in money in the city of Worcester. And so I think we can take advantage of that, getting, especially on the commercial side of our growth. We have, industrial parks that I think are underutilized. We already have space set aside, so I think we can take advantage of that. So again, we'll post this magazine online so folks can see, but it's just another opportunity that we're out there working with the local Economic Development Foundation and keeping, I think, Massachusetts' best kept secret no longer a secret. So, challenges. I'll go quickly because I'm going to wrap this up. The biggest challenge in this community is the sheer size, right? So 104 square miles, 36 miles of coastline. I said when I left 5 years ago, the challenge in Plymouth is that you have urban areas of town, you have suburban areas of town, you have rural areas of town. When I worked for the city of Worcester, I had one problem. I had urban problems. I didn't have any other problems. So it was easy when you think about ordinances and bylaws to be very focused. In this community, if you want to draft a bylaw, how do you draft a bylaw that is a one-size-fits-all for the folks that live in North Plymouth versus the folks that live in Cedarville? It's a huge challenge. So, and then the sheer size, when we talk about transportation needs for the school department, is a problem. When we talk about the sheer size, when our DPW, we have a very small DPW compared to 104 square miles. We only have 135 DPW employees. Although that's big, it's not enough for a community this size. So that will always be a challenge that we're going to face. And so we have to figure out creative ways to get around those. Housing, again, we could probably spend 2 hours just doing a housing conversation. We know for a fact that the cost of housing in Plymouth is outpacing our ability to afford housing in Plymouth. I want to work with the select board. I want to work with the housing trust. I want to work with the CPC and coming up with creative ways to find affordable housing for our youth who are coming out of college and can't move back home because they can't buy a home, or in our seniors who are being priced out of it because they're in fixed income. So we got to fix that. It's not a Plymouth problem. It's not a Massachusetts problem. It's actually, in my mind, it's a New England problem. New England is a very expensive place to live. So we got to think about different ways that we can approach those issues. Update on the Water Street Sewer Project. It's stalled. We're about halfway through. We're going to restart the project in December. We will get it done, but at what cost? That's the question. So right now, we have a change order sitting on our desk for $4.5 million. This goes back to litigation negotiations. I'm trying to work with the contractor to figure out ways that we can kind of come to some common ground and reduce that $4.5 million change order. So another challenge that we have to address. Communications, and what I mean by communications is, how are we going to communicate? How can I do a better job communicating with the public on what their needs are? This gentleman over here and I have had many conversations, Joe and I, about thinking about creative ways to get the good information out. We have a new newspaper in town. Hopefully we can work with them to get the information out. Going to All Things Plymouth is not a good source of information. So how can we unravel all that and get the right information out? Oftentimes, the rumors spread, and that becomes a news story. So I want to think about ways that we can communicate the right information. Because the thing is, there's a lot of great things that happen in this community. We're just not telling the story. So how can we tell that story? Budget and capital needs. Again, I think this is going to be a problem that we're going to face for the foreseeable future. We're in the process of building the budget. It's very clear that our revenues are outpacing. Our expenses are outpacing our revenues. Very clear. And so what I try to get folks to think about, oftentimes you get stuck in the $280 million budget. Well, that $280 million is already spent. So let's focus on the new revenues and the new expenses. So if our new revenues consist of $10 million a year, that's the easier conversation to have. And so how can we keep our expenses underneath that $10 million a year? And it's a challenge because fixed costs continue to go up. Our health insurance is going up by 8% and 8% in 25. Our pensions go up our pension liability goes up every year. And salary and wages. Salary and wages is like 80% of our budget, and so every year those COLAs kick in. We're going to be entering collective bargaining again this come January, and the unions are going to be asking for more. And the thing is, what's happening right now is the market is so competitive. If you went on the fourth floor rated side of HR, we probably have 25 job openings right now. And it's not because we don't pay well, because we do pay well. It's just we have the lowest unemployment rate, I was told by Steve Cole, in the state's history. I think going back to World War II, I think was the last time it was this low. So there's nobody out there. So we have to think of creative ways to get folks there, and oftentimes it's money. And then the capital needs, new schools, new fire stations, all these things are going to start to rise to the top, and we have to think about ways in which, we can budget for those appropriately. We have about $7 million in excess levy capacity, but in this current trajectory, we'll exhaust that in the next few years. And so for those of you that don't know, once excess levy capacity gone, the only conversation you can have is Prop 2.5 overrides. This town has never seen a Prop 2.5 override. People have talked about it, but they've never seen it. So that means we go to the ballot, the voters get to vote whether or not they want to increase their own taxes. So again, the budget is going to be something that we will continue to contend with for the very foreseeable future. Lack of succession planning is another challenge. We have a number of key administrators that will be retiring. You saw, when Chief Bradley retired as a fire chief, they had to extend him an additional 2 years. The poor guy couldn't even retire on time because they had to extend him because there was no succession plan in place. So we will have a heavy emphasis at this year's budget on succession planning, making sure when our folks who have, like Lee Hartman, 30 years in the business, he's going to take 30 years of historical knowledge with him when he retires. So we need to make sure that that continues on for the town, because the problem when you don't do that, you actually become an inefficient form of government, right? And so we want to make sure that we stay efficient. And the last thing I'll mention about present challenges is cybersecurity. It's a major concern of all of us. Every Tuesday, I have a staff meeting with all the department heads, and our IT director gives us a new community to talk about who's been hacked, who is being held hostage and has to give up millions of dollars because their system is at risk. So cybersecurity, again, is something we're going to have to put resources behind. I'd rather spend $100,000 a year on some staff that focus on cybersecurity versus have to write a check for $5 million because of some type of ransomware. I went quick towards the last because I know it's 10 minutes of 8, but just some quick announcements. So tree lighting events tomorrow night. Hopefully the rain holds out. It's going to be bigger and better than ever before. We have 4 hours of free concert. The Kiwanis group, they're going to be doing Santa Claus, so please come out if you can. So it's going to be a great event. And then some key meetings that are coming up on December 19th. We have 2 joint meetings. First, starting at around 5, the select board will meet with the charter committee. And then right after that, we'll throw them out of the room, and then we'll bring the planning board in to have a joint meeting with them to talk about the housing production plan. So those are some things I think folks should be aware of. And so back to you. What can I be doing better as a town manager? That's for you to decide and give me some feedback on. What would you like to see come from town government? We, again, service-oriented, and so we'll do the best I can to meet your expectations. So I'll turn it back to our facilitators to discuss questions.
Thanks so much, Derek. We do have some questions, and you've already answered a number of them in your presentation and all of your explanations. So Ginny and I are going to go over a few questions that we do have, and we had reviewed many questions and tried to cover a lot of topics. So one of the important, very important question is to a lot of us, with so many volunteers needed for boards and committees, how are and how should qualifications be determined for the specific appointments?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we think of boards and committees, it goes back to our policies or our dated policies. One thing that I haven't really found are our principles of operation for each one of our boards and committees. So wouldn't that be great for our Board of Health to have a 2-page, 3-page principles of operation? It talks about the term limits, the number of members, their mission, their tasks, and their framework in which they're supposed to meet. I think we need to do that for all of our boards and committees. And if we had principles of operation for each one of our boards and committees, we could also include the qualifications that we think are appropriate, because some of this stuff is very technical. So we want folks that have technical backgrounds.
Okay. Second question. Could you provide an update on the 1,000 acres down off of Bourne Road, for those who don't know where the 1,000 acres, where the studio is going to be?
So the 1,000 acres, we continue to work with Mass Fish and Game. They have a person who has been really looking at the deeds over the last 8 years and trying to identify which parcels of land are owned by the town. And so we continue those conversations. The hope is that we can get to a point where Fish and Game will come back to the select board and make an offer for the parcels of land that they want to acquire and put in permanent conservation.
Okay. We also, a lot of us know that the town has been working with DCR on the Water Street Park, which is the amphitheater where we do our Project Arts concerts and events in the summer. Could you provide any detail and an update on that?
Yeah, sure. So again, this is a good question. This is, again, another select board endeavor, and I just kind of have been running point on their behalf. But right now, I've had multiple, and some of our selectmen members have as well, meetings with DCR Commissioner, so the Department of Conservation and Recreation, who control that property. The goal, working with them, is that we will execute an agreement with DCR, that the town will provide care and custody to that park, and DCR will give up control of that park, which means that we'll manage it, we'll issue permits for it, we can work with the Chamber of Commerce and any other organization that look at that park as a gem to draw in more tourism. There's that component, and then additional to that, we're also in conversations with DCR to convince them to gift us the state pier. So if we're able to get the state pier, that'll be the primary location for future cruise lines.
Just a side comment, Mike Landers would be so excited about that.
Yes, he would.
Could you provide an update on the migrant situation in Plymouth?
Sure. So we have 2 locations here in town that are hosting migrants. One location currently has about 66 individuals. That is a breakup, I think it was about 30 adults and 36 children. And the other location was the first location, has approximately, it fluctuates, but they have at any given time about 100 individuals living at that second location. So a total of about 160 total in town.
Okay, this is kind of follow-up to things you've already covered. If people wanted to have, a sample of your table of organization. Is that on the town website, or is there a place that you can go to read it better or download it?
Yeah, so I can do a couple of things. One thing I can do is I can post this PowerPoint on the town webpage, the homepage. So it'll be up there for a few weeks before it falls to the bottom. So I can post it there, and then what I can do is after the board hopefully approves the proposed recommendation on Tuesday, I can take the final table of organization and put that on the town's website as well.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is the Holtec agreement, which town meeting members, have. We all have it. But is that on the town website also?
It's probably not, but I can definitely make that happen.
Because we talked about it tonight, and some of you might, it's not hard to read. It wasn't that many pages, but it's outlined. It's very clear.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
And I'm a bug about acronyms, and PEC agreements is Plymouth what?
Public Employee Committee.
Thank you. Okay. I think that's it for my questions. And it is 5 minutes of 8.
Thank you
If I could.
Oh,
just-
is there anything
does
you want to
anybody wanna
add?
ask me
Somebody had
anything?
If you
No?
want to add anything that we may have missed?
I don't think so. I mean, again, there's a lot to cover. I just try to hit the high points. But, I'm happy to talk to folks afterwards if they'd like to, talk about anything in particular to them or their neighborhood.
Yes, and we're going to have a social hour, and Derek would be very thrilled to speak to any of you. He let us know that ahead of time, so we've provided us a few little goodies, and we hope you can stay, and thank you for coming, and thanks for all at home who watched. And this will be posted on demand probably tomorrow on the PAC TV website, so people can watch it. And we thank Derek so much and thank all of you for coming.